Good morning, everybody.
G'day.
Welcome back to Theology Thursday, and we are in the second half of Ephesians now, chapter 4. In fact, last week we didn't get far into chapter 4.
No, we didn't.
Just the first few verses. So
We looked at the opening lines from chapter 4, where Paul instructed the church to be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love, and to make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace.
Yeah.
And so last time we talked about the unity of the Spirit and being humble.
Yeah.
And so this week we need to consider the concepts of gentleness, patience, and what it means to bear with one another in love. So maybe gentleness is a good spot to start.
one of the fruits of the Spirit.
It is. One of the fruit, singular.
One of the fruit, yes.
Yes, only one fruit. One of the things that really bugs me, it irks me greatly, is the way on TV and movies and so forth that clergymen are most often portrayed. So the media always seems to build us the same way. They're usually weak in mind, in character, in strength. They're normally miserable misfits with no backbone, usually quite effeminate and mother-like. They're generally gullible.
I'm not sure which movies you're referring to there, but
Generally,
yes,
no.
I'll go with it. Go with it.
Well, do you look at any of the ads that come on?
I think particularly English.
Yeah.
English portrayed clergy,
they're
for sure.
terrible.
They do seem to be a little bit insipid. But
This is supposed to portray some kind of gentleness. After all, to be gentle, you need to be weak. That's what they're portraying.
Yeah.
But being gentle, as we've already said, is part of the fruit of the Spirit that we read about in Galatians 5. And it's part, therefore, of the character of God. So none of those descriptions, insipid, gullible, whatever, none of those can in any way describe biblical gentleness, because they don't describe the character of God. So as part of the fruit of the Spirit, Paul listed the Greek word that is generally translated as gentleness and meekness. However, it's sometimes hard to find the right word to use when you're translating from Greek to English, or from one language into another. It's sometimes hard. So we live near the big pineapple.
Right.
But I wonder, how would I go about translating the word pineapple if I had to translate it to a language spoken by some remote tribe, an Eskimo tribe who's never seen or tasted tropical fruit, let alone a pineapple? They would have no understanding of what a pineapple is or what the word means. So I'd have to find some way to express this thorny, prickly fruit that's really nasty
On the
but
outside.
yet sweet and edible under the skin.
Right.
And that's really how it is for this Greek word prautes. Gentleness and meekness are the best that we can manage in translating it, but such words don't really describe what it means. The great Greek philosopher Aristotle described prautes as a centre point between two extremes. So the centre point between two extremes. For him, gentleness meant finding the right balance.
Yeah. So you got really angry people at one end and really weak people at the other, and it's kind of...
Gentleness is somewhere in the middle. It's maintaining a good equilibrium, to have steadiness and stability that won't waver or be moved to extremes. In other words, to be under control.
Yeah.
An illustration of this word that was actually used by the Greeks quite a bit in describing what prautes means was the nature of the horse. So the power of an animal that's brought under control of its owner. A tamed horse has essentially submitted its strength. The strength of the animal is no longer used wildly, but has been focused in order to fulfill a purpose.
Right.
And gentleness, in that sense, is really power under control.
Right.
Submitted strength.
Interestingly, the last of that fruit of the Spirit is self-control.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting when we get to that. When we do Galatians, I guess one day, we'll look at that word as well. But yeah, I see what you're saying, that, it's not just being a pushover. and but it's not being the domineering. You know, it's in the middle where you're under control, like a.
The power of water can be controlled to turn a turbine and produce electricity that gives power to a whole community. Or on a smaller scale, it can turn a wheel that's connected, say, to a grinding stone, and that can turn wheat into flour. But left uncontrolled, the force of water can cause incredible damage. We've seen it in floods, even just in our own area, let alone tsunamis that we see around the world, that can destroy buildings and cause the death of many people. I love poetry, and the great British poet Longfellow, I think he illustrates this really well, this principle in his poem, The Village Blacksmith. He describes the blacksmith like this: "The smith, a mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and the muscle of his brawny arms as strong as iron bands." But later in the poem, the blacksmith hears his daughter. He's sitting with his daughter in church, and he hears her singing and singing a hymn that his wife used to love. And Longfellow now pictures the blacksmith in a very different light, as his daughter's singing reminds him of his now deceased wife. And Longfellow goes on and says this: "He needs must think of her once more, how in the grave she lies, and with his hand, rough hand, he wipes a tear out of his eyes." This is gentleness. It's might, but restrained. Humility and grace, I guess, go hand in hand. Right. Gentleness is power or strength that's controlled.
Right.
It's the submission of our strength and will to God's control and purpose. It's not weakness.
No.
But strength or power that's controlled.
Love it.
In fact, the weak person who can't handle their own frustrations in life and they take it out on someone else, that's really showing a sign of weakness, not gentleness.
Because they can't control it.
Yeah.
Which is a form of weakness, right?
Gentleness is the fruit of the Spirit that brings us under God's control. It's power under control, submitted strength. We can speak words that influence others. We can act in ways that help or hurt. We can choose what influence will motivate our words and our actions. Gentleness constrains and channels that power.
It's a powerful thought.
But like humility, gentleness does not mean that we become a doormat to be trodden down by the world's ideas and ideals. Rather, we stand firmly on God's word and submit to his will and way alone. So never mistake gentleness for just being, always submitting to everything and accepting everything that's happening. No, that's not what it is. We submit to God's will and his way and his purpose.
Surely there is a modern word, like for this, controlled strength that is not wild, it's not out of control. There's got to be we have to think about that one.
Yep. Okay, so that's a bit of an idea of gentleness. Patience.
Yeah, what about patience?
I've once heard it said that patience is a virtue.
Yes, I've heard that many times.
Many times, particularly when a lady tells us about the found in a woman and not in a man line.
Yes.
It's really a bit of a cliche, and most Christians know that patience is listed by Paul in Galatians 5 as one of the fruit of the Spirit as well. So the notion that Christians ought to be patient would probably not be disputed by many, if any. But as with many of the virtues in life, the biblical authors seem to assume that we know what patience actually is, and so they don't give explicit definition.
Right. I mean, we've just finished, that series on the book of Revelation, where I said many times that God is patient to 1,000 generations. God is patient. He is patient with you. He's enduring with your stupidity or whatever. But don't think that means infinitely patient. There is a line. There is a point where he goes, all right, enough's enough. And sometimes I think, we can get the impression that patience means infinite infinite tolerance.
Tolerance, there's another word.
But there's a little more to it.
So if you were asked, could you really define patience? I wonder if most people would be able to do that, especially if you were asked to define patience rather than simply trotting out some examples of what you think patience might look like. Actually define the word. And so a broad definition that is often given is waiting without complaint. But if patience really is some virtuous quality, what is virtuous about not complaining? If I went to the airport to meet someone and found that the plane was late, and I simply sat down happily with reading my emails and making a few phone calls and catching up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, it would hardly seem virtuous simply because I wasn't complaining about the wait. Something else has to be inserted to make the lack of complaint a virtue. And generally, that which is inserted is discomfort or inconvenience. And it's because a circumstance is uncomfortable or inconvenient for someone that we find the refusal to complain as less than usual. And so in this regard, we see the person as displaying patience.
Right.
When everything's...
In fact, isn't one of the old English words is long suffering?
Long suffering.
Long suffering. It's probably a better word because it does, there is suffering involved and, it's inconvenient, I'm uncomfortable, but without complaining, with, control again.
I don't know why we replaced it.
The concept of control in that, and impatience is losing that control. And having a little hissy fit, I guess.
When everything's going our way, patience is really easy to demonstrate. It's like I've often said, obedience is not obedience until we're doing something we don't want to. I was never disobedient when my mum said to eat the ice cream.
Yeah.
But when it came to Brussels sprouts, it might have been a different story.
Brussels sprouts got a bad rap. I got to tell you, they're yummy. Hey, boys and girls, you might want to try them again.
And patience is the same. The true test of patience comes when our rights are violated or we are significantly inconvenienced by someone else's actions. So maybe we can improve on that initial definition and say that to be patient is to endure discomfort or inconvenience without complaint.
Right.
This means that patience actually involves some other virtues as well, especially self-control, which comes into the fruit of the Spirit. And that means then that patience is not a fundamental virtue that stands alone. It's more a complex coming together of other virtues.
And it is so much like many of the other fruit of the Spirit. Love. It's easy to love somebody who's lovable, but it becomes a virtue when you're loving somebody that's not. Love your enemy. Love those who bless those who curse you.
Yeah,
that's when it becomes that. Yep. Patience isn't, like you said, it's not, we're just waiting, and everything's happy, and it's when it is a bit uncomfortable and you control. It's all about that. I am harnessing my my flesh, my inner spirit, and I'm pointing it towards the good.
And I think that's why it's important that we see the fruit of the Spirit as a singular.
Right.
I can't say, well, there's the fruits of the Spirit, and my fruit is not patience.
Yeah.
Well, no, sorry, it doesn't work that way. It's the fruit. It's a whole package, and they work together. So, for example, if I'm standing in a line or waiting in traffic, all of the people who are waiting are equally as worthy to get what they're waiting for or to arrive at their destinations. They all have the same right as me. I know, however, my own thoughts, and they're the only ones I know. And I will naturally be inclined to put myself first. We all do that. And the result is frustration. I'm not there, I'm not first. And this strongly tempts me to be impatient. And so in this case, humility would be a key to patience, putting others first. See how they intertwine. So patience is not simply teeth, clenched endurance. Rather, it's an attitude of expectation. Although most people consider patience to be a passive, or a passive waiting, or a gentle tolerance, most of the Greek words translated patience in the New Testament are active, and they're robust. And I say most of the words because there's several words that are used that are translated as patience. Take, for example, in Hebrews 12, it says this, in verse 1, "Therefore, since we are surrounded with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight of the sin which so easily besets us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." So, do you win a race by passively waiting for the slow runner to catch up and gently tolerating the cheats, as they come past and try and trip you or whatever it might? Certainly not. The word translated patience in this verse is endurance.
Right.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. And so it's an active patience. It's not a passive patience.
Right.
A Christian runs the race patiently by persevering through difficulties. And in the Bible, patience is persevering towards a goal, enduring trials, or expectantly waiting for a promise to be filled. Like Abraham waited for a promise to be fulfilled. And then he had to go through a test of that. When he went up
25 years of
yeah.
patient endurance.
And then...
And not giving up.
And then the mountain experience.
Right.
The farmer patiently sows his seed and then he waits. But he waits because he knows that there's going to be results. He has patience because he knows that there's going to be an outcome. And this is the attitude that Paul says that we need to have each for the other. Even if our brother or sister causes us to endure discomfort or inconvenience, we do that without complaint. If there is correction needed, then it has to happen in such a gentle and patient manner that our actions are always intended to keep peace and love as the key ingredients of our dealing with others. We maintain, or I'll just go back there. I remember somebody once told me that their spiritual gift was criticism. That was serious. That's not an example of patience. It's where correction is needed. It has to be done in a way that aims at bringing love and tolerance and so forth, while still correcting error.
Wow.
We maintain this.
Can you imagine being married to that person? Just exercising my gift here.
I knew the couple, and he probably did need patience. We maintain this attitude of the bond of family joined together in peace and love, one to the other. Unity is not uniformity. We can actually celebrate our differences. I have 4 kids, and they are knitted together in a bond of family love and peace, and they're a close-knit group. They're always in each other's ears and online, and we have our family get-togethers and all this sort of stuff. But yet, even though we're very much one, and if anything happened to one, everybody would be there, yet they are each unique. They are very different. We meet together, but our lives are lived quite separately, but supported and encouraged to be who we are and what we have been individually called to be or to do. And the church is just like that. We are united by the Spirit as one, regardless of the individual paths that we might walk. And our task is to live with that unity in mind and be humble and gentle and patient and bear with one another in love.
Beautiful. Well, may that be an encouragement to you this week. Go back over Ephesians 4, that first section. Read on, because we'll be touching on the next bit next week. But yeah, like, it's so important that to remember it's not just in the good times. That it's easy to be patient and gentle and humble in the good times. It's when you're facing a challenge.
Yep.
That these things need to come to the fore, and we control them and live a godly life. We try to, what would Jesus do? How would he respond? That's what I want to do. So God bless you. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you next Theology Thursday.